Hey everyone, welcome back to Creepy Mysteries. First off, a huge thank you to all of you for the amazing support you've shown so far. Your comments and likes mean a lot to me and keep this channel going. If you're new here, I'd love for you to stick around and join our mysterious journey. Don't forget to leave a comment and share your thoughts. It helps the channel grow and keeps the spooky stories coming. Now let's dive into today's stories. I've been living in Manhattan for about 5 years now, and like most New Yorkers, I've grown used to the quirks of city life. The constant noise, the weird smells, and the occasional odd neighbor were just part of the charm, or at least that's what I told myself. My apartment is nothing fancy, just a small one-bedroom in an older building. It's not perfect, but it's home, and most importantly, it's quiet. My windows face a narrow alleyway, and the building across from me is just a plain brick wall with nothing interesting to look at. Or at least that's what I thought. This all happened a few nights ago, and I still haven't been able to shake the feeling that something isn't right. It was a Thursday night, and I just finished dinner. I was washing the dishes, going through the motions of my usual routine, when I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. I paused, wiping my hand on a towel, and turned toward the window. There was a window across the alley that hadn't been there before. I froze, staring at it. For the past 5 years, that wall had been completely solid, just blank gray bricks. But now there was a single window, 2 floors up from mine, with a faint, flickering light glowing behind it. It wasn't a steady glow, like a lamp or a TV. It flickered unevenly, like candlelight. At first, I thought I must have been mistaken. Maybe the window had always been there, and I just never noticed it. But that didn't make sense. I'd spent so many nights looking out that window, zoning out while washing dishes or scrolling through my phone. There's no way I could have missed it. The longer I stared, the more uneasy I felt. Something about it seemed off. And then I saw movement. A shadow passed by the window, just for a second. I stepped closer, my heart starting to race. Someone was in there. I leaned forward, squinting, trying to make out any details, but the light inside was so dim it was hard to see. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. Maybe the building had added a new apartment or renovated a section. That had to be it, right? I was just overthinking it, but something about the whole thing made me feel watched. I decided to grab my phone and take a picture. I turned off the lights in my apartment so I wouldn't be as visible, then zoomed in as much as I could. The photo wasn't very clear, but I thought I could make out the faint outline of a figure standing in the window. And then, as I was staring at my phone, something happened that made my stomach drop. The figure in the window raised its hand and mimicked the exact motion I had just made when I adjusted my phone. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. For a moment, I stood there, paralyzed, trying to process what I had just seen. The person in the window wasn't just standing there. They were watching me, and somehow they could see me clearly enough to copy my movements. I backed away from the window, my heart pounding. I told myself it wasn't possible. There was no way they could see me, not with how dim my apartment was. Maybe it was just a coincidence, or my mind playing tricks on me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I pulled the blinds down and double-checked that the window was locked before heading to bed. I wanted to forget about it, but I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that flickering light, that shadowy figure mimicking me. Around 2 a.m., I finally started to drift off, until I heard it, a faint tapping sound. At first, I thought I was dreaming. I opened my eyes, my heart racing, and lay there in the dark, listening. The tapping was soft and rhythmic, like someone lightly knocking on glass. I sat up, my chest tightening. The sound was coming from the kitchen. I grabbed my phone and slowly crept out of bed, my hands shaking. The tapping grew louder as I approached the kitchen, and I realized it was coming from the window. The blinds were still down, but I could see the faint outline of something on the other side of the glass. I reached out with trembling hands and lifted the blinds just enough to peek outside. The window across the alley was dark. The flickering light was gone, and there was no sign of the figure I'd seen earlier. But then I realized something that made my blood run cold. The tapping wasn't coming from the other building. It was coming from my side of the window. I stared at the glass, my breath catching in my throat. For a moment, all I could see was my own reflection, pale and wide-eyed. But then I saw something else. There was another face in the glass. It wasn't behind the window. It was inside my apartment, staring back at me. Before I could even scream, the lights in my apartment went out. I stood frozen in the dark, my heart hammering in my chest. My reflection stared back at me, wide-eyed and horrified. But the face in the glass wasn't my own. It was pale, gaunt, with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce right through me. It was so close that I could see every detail of the face, every wrinkle, every hairline. My breath caught in my throat as I stumbled backward, tripping over a chair. I had no idea what was going on, but one thing was certain. That face didn't belong to anyone in this apartment. I fumbled for my phone in the dark, desperate to turn on the flashlight. As I shone it around the room, I could hear the faintest scratching sound from the window, like nails scraping against glass. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped the phone. I couldn't move. I was paralyzed by fear. All I could do was watch the reflection in the glass, and it was still there, staring at me, never blinking, never moving. I turned to the window and pulled the blinds down, my heart pounding in my ears. My hands were slick with sweat as I tried to calm myself down, telling myself it was just my mind playing tricks. But as soon as I turned around, I heard the unmistakable sound of the window creaking open. Slowly, I turned my head toward the kitchen. The window, the one that had been locked just minutes before, was now wide open. The tapping had stopped. I stood still, not daring to move. The cold draft coming through the open window was enough to freeze me in place. I knew something was wrong, something I couldn't explain, but I couldn't just stand there either. I grabbed my coat, running toward the door. I didn't care about anything else at that point. I just needed to get out of that apartment. But as I reached for the doorknob, I heard a soft, whispering voice behind me. "Why did you leave?" I spun around so quickly I almost fell. But there was no one there. The room was empty. I felt a sickening chill run down my spine. The face in the window? It wasn't just a reflection. I slammed the door open and ran down the hall, not stopping until I was outside in the fresh air. I looked up at my apartment window one last time. The kitchen light flickered on, casting a dim glow across the alley. And through the glass, I saw a figure standing there, motionless, staring at me from the window, its hollow eyes never leaving mine. I didn't go back inside. The next day, I moved out. The apartment was empty when the landlord showed up to do a walkthrough, but I swear, when I was leaving, I saw the same window, that same flickering light staring back at me from across the alley. Whoever, or whatever was behind that window is still out there, and it's waiting. When I first moved into my apartment in Harlem, I didn't think much of it. It was a classic New York experience. Tiny, old, and just cheap enough to fit my budget. The apartment itself was bare bones, with worn wooden floors that creaked underfoot and windows that didn't quite close all the way. I had a job at a local cafe, working long hours for not much pay, so I didn't mind the cramped space. It was just me and my cat Marley in this tiny apartment, and for the first time in a while, I felt like I could breathe. The building wasn't anything special either. It was a 5-story walk-up, and the neighbors were just like the ones you'd expect in a cheap, middle-of-nowhere building. Loud, inconsiderate, but harmless enough. The hallway smelled of old mildew, the kind of scent that tells you the place hasn't been renovated in decades. And the building's elevator? It barely worked, so I spent a lot of time climbing stairs. It wasn't great, but it was mine. A week into living there, I found something strange. I was unpacking boxes in one of the closets when I noticed an old rotary phone tucked away in the corner. It was sitting on the top shelf, half hidden behind a stack of old sheets and blankets. At first, I thought it was just an old piece of junk left by the previous tenant. The phone was black and bulky, with a thick coil cord and a heavy receiver. It looked like something straight out of a 1950s movie. I didn't think much of it, but curiosity got the best of me. So I dusted it off and examined it. The wires weren't attached to anything, and I could see that the phone wasn't plugged in. No way it could work, I thought. Still, something about it felt off, like it didn't belong there. But I shrugged it off. I put it back in the closet and forgot about it for the time being. A few days later, after a long shift at the cafe, I came home around 11 p.m., exhausted. I threw my bag down and collapsed onto the couch, flipping on the TV. Marley jumped up next to me and curled up into a ball, purring quietly. I loved that cat more than anything, and as I sat there, I just felt like I could relax for the first time in days. The apartment was eerily quiet, which was strange considering the constant noise outside. Sirens, car horns, people shouting in the street below. But tonight, everything felt muffled. The quiet was almost unnatural. I don't know why I got up, but I felt this sudden urge to walk into the kitchen. Maybe it was to grab a snack or just to stretch my legs. As I passed the hallway, I noticed something that made my stomach drop: the rotary phone. It was sitting on the table in the middle of the hallway, right outside my bedroom door. My heart skipped a beat. I couldn't remember moving it. I was certain I had put it back in the closet. I stepped toward it, my feet moving almost involuntarily. I had a strange feeling in my gut, something telling me I shouldn't touch it, but curiosity was overwhelming. I picked it up slowly and looked at it. The receiver was cold in my hand, the kind of cold that felt unnatural. I turned it over, and my fingers hovered over the numbers. That's when it happened. The phone rang. The sound wasn't the modern tinny ring you hear today. No, it was the unmistakable sound of an old-school rotary phone with the mechanical click as the bell chimed. But the phone wasn't even plugged in. I almost dropped the receiver. My first instinct was to put it down and walk away, but I couldn't. My heart was racing, and I had this overwhelming need to know what was going on. It was as if some part of me knew this wasn't just a glitch, that something strange was happening. I brought the receiver to my ear, and I swear to God, my whole body went cold the second I heard the voice. "Hello?" I said, my voice shaking. There was a long pause. For a moment, I thought the line had gone dead, but then a faint voice whispered back, "Sarah." I felt the blood drain from my face. I hadn't told anyone my name yet. I hadn't met a single neighbor who knew who I was, let alone someone who knew where I lived. It was impossible. I tried to say something, but the words wouldn't come out. Instead, I just stood there, frozen. The voice continued, soft and unnerving, almost like it was savoring my fear. "I know where you are. I can see you." My heart skipped a beat. I tried to speak again, but my mouth felt dry, like I couldn't form any words. Then in a low, raspy whisper, it added, "I know what you're wearing. The blue sweater, the pajama pants, the black socks." I felt sick. I had no idea how this person could see me, but I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't a prank. This was something else. "Who is this?" I finally managed to croak out. There was a long silence, and for a moment I thought the call had ended. But then the voice came back, slow and deliberate. "You're alone tonight, aren't you? No one will come for you. Not tonight." I don't know what came over me, but I hung up the phone. I slammed the receiver down onto the base, my breath coming in short gasps. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I felt a cold sweat break out all over my body. But then, the phone started ringing again. This time I didn't even hesitate. I just grabbed the receiver and answered it. "Who are you? What do you want?" I yelled into the phone, but there was no answer, just the sound of heavy breathing. Then faintly, I heard something that sent a chill straight to my core. "I'm almost there." The line went dead. I stood there in silence, the phone still clutched in my hand. My pulse was thundering in my ears and my whole body was on edge. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what to do. I checked the locks on the door and windows. I even grabbed a kitchen knife from the drawer just in case. But everything seemed normal. The building was quiet, too quiet. The sounds from outside had stopped. The city felt distant. But then I heard it. The footsteps. Soft, slow, deliberate footsteps climbing the stairs outside my apartment. They were coming closer, each step making my heart beat faster. The sound was unmistakable. The heavy, slow footfalls of someone coming up the stairs one step at a time. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't make a sound. I was paralyzed with fear. The footsteps stopped, right outside my door. I don't know how long I stood there, my back pressed against the wall, holding the knife in my shaking hand. But I never heard the footsteps again. They just stopped. I don't know who or what was on the other side of that door, but after what felt like an eternity, I couldn't take it anymore. I called the police. When they arrived, they checked the building and found nothing. No one had been on the stairs. No one had entered the building. They told me I was probably just hearing things, maybe sleep deprived from work. But I knew better. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept my phone in my hand, waiting for the call to come again, but it never did. I left the next morning. I couldn't stay there anymore. I moved out and found a new place across town, but I still remember that voice, the footsteps, and the way that phone rang, even though it wasn't connected to anything. And every time I hear a phone ring, I can't help but wonder, what if it rings again? That's for today from Creepy Mysteries. Hope you enjoyed the stories. If you enjoyed the stories and want more tales that send chills down your spine, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. And remember, the scariest stories are often the ones that feel a little too real. Until next time, stay safe and stay in the light.